Hey guys, welcome back to Sad Dad. My name's Dave Apkarian. I am a comedian out of Fresno, California, and this is a podcast where I sit down with my fellow funny friends and we talk about dads. Hi. We did it. I hope you guys, seemed like you guys really enjoyed that Father's Day episode I put out on Sunday, that little bonus episode. It's actually one of my most downloaded episodes to date, so thank you guys so much for that. I was real nervous. I think I mentioned in that intro for that episode, I thought it was really entertaining, for me personally, just to hear all the family stories and stuff. But it turns out you guys were into it too. So thank you so much. And it's one of those situations where I kind of had to just go with my gut. If I liked it, I had to trust that fans of this show would like it. So glad that worked out. Killer episode this week with a guy named Chris Estrada, real funny comedian out of LA. And I do something, sometimes when I sit down for these recordings, I've been better about it lately, but sometimes I'll drink like a gallon of coffee. Because a lot of times we'll be recording in the morning and I'm still trying to wake up. So I'm like, I'll drink coffee. But man, I turn into a goddamn chatterbox when I'm all hopped up on coffee. So I sound like for the first 15 minutes of this episode, I sound like a maniac. Or maybe you guys won't feel the same way, but I was listening back to it. I mean, I settled down eventually, but I'm just like, holy shit, Dave, shut the fuck up and let your guests talk. So I apologize for that. I'll be more mindful of that in the future. Just kind of a weird cut. I mentioned it in the episode, or as Chris and I are talking, I got real worried that I was recording it wrong, and I had a problem when I recorded with Ramsey Badawi, and was still shaking off that feeing, of doing it wrong, because that was such a great episode with Ramsey, and it's a shame that I goofed up the audio like I did. So, so just be mindful of that. This episode, it's coming out in kind of a timely manner. I didn't plan it in any way, shape, or form. It's just the way it worked out, and I'm kind of glad. We're going through some real weird stuff right now, you guys. Chris talks a lot about his dad migrating. I mean, I ask him about it, but he talks a lot about his dad migrating to the United States from Mexico. And I'm releasing this episode on the backdrop of it. We have these kids being separated from their parents at the border, and it's just so dark, it's I get that we have a history in this country, a dark one, and you kind of sometimes you fool yourself into thinking that we're past so much of it, and then you sit down with somebody like Chris, or shit, if you just turn on the news and you're reminded there's so much further that we need to go, and I'm trying not to get too ranty about this sort of thing, but it's just unbelievable. And I think Chris's story at a time like this is a real important story, and I'm glad that I have it to share with you guys. And we just got to be better, I mean, it's so weird. People get so hung up on like, you hear the phrase, it's a slippery slope. It's a slippery slope whenever they're talking about things like guns. Gun control, that's a slippery slope. You know where that leads. Where's it go? Let's see it through all the way to the end. It leads to nobody having any guns. That's what you're worried about. You're worried that you won't have a gun and the government will have guns. What about this slippery slope? Why aren't we talking about this slippery slope? putting children in concentration camps and separating them from their families. They're like, oh, bro, if a mom commits a crime, she gets separated from her children. Here, if she's a legal citizen or not. Yeah, they go into fucking foster care. These aren't foster concentration camps we're putting these children. It's cages. Put them in cages. It's not the same. Yeah, I saw a guy on social media who's virtue signaling is 2018's avocado toast. Yeah. Careful not to cut yourself on all that edge, buddy. I don't know. It's just, it's somebody like, like me, grew up with an Armenian grandmother who would just tell me these horror stories about what the Turkish Ottoman Empire did to our people, these massacres. And then I hear phrases like slippery slope. It's a slippery slope, bro. That's where this goes. That's where this slippery slope goes. You just peek down the bottom of that water slide. Oh, it's genocide. It's ethnic cleansing. That's what this is. That's the slippery slope we're on. Seems a little hypocritical. Worry about one slippery slope and not the other. I don't know. I'm just kidding. Just getting real ranty. Sorry. I'm sorry. But call your congressman. Call him. Tell him. I like what some of the states are doing, how some of the states are standing up to this and pulling their National Guard troops off the border. I think that's good. Checks and balances. I don't know. Anyway, sorry. Got super heavy on you on that, but it's just, we've just got to be better. We can't. I should tell a joke. I don't have anything funny to say. Sorry, Chris. I gave you kind of a downer of an intro to this podcast. It's just, I'm just talking with you guys. You guys seem cool. All right. Well, let's jump into this thing. Sorry, I sound like an absolute maniac for the first 15 minutes of this chat with Chris. We're getting into some cool stuff, though. Stuff we haven't talked about. I haven't talked about yet with a guest on this show about his upbringing in Central LA and again just that immigrant story. I mean, Chris is first generation, and so kind of seeing the way he had to straddle the line of the old world and the new world. I think those types of stories are absolutely fascinating, and I think you'll feel that way too. So let's get into it, guys. Chris Estrada, I'll catch you on the other side of this thing. On that premise, on this premise, and I just kind of like, I was like, I got to do something now. Like I got to do this now before somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely.
comes up with something similar. Yeah. And so yeah, I went for it. I had to get all the equipment. I was kind of
Did you train yourself to use how to use the equipment and everything?
Well, I had like recorded bands and like I'm a musician too, so like I had a lot of knowledge on like the front end of this operation, like mics and mixing boards and all, like recording into a laptop. But it was all the back end stuff. Like how the do you get a podcast onto iTunes? You know, and so like that was all stuff I had to like talk to some of my friends about, like that had podcasts. I was like, what do you do? Yeah, and it's really not that hard. It's come to find, if the barrier to entry were all that high, there would not be as many podcasts out
absolutely.
there. So that's cool. I actually I started recording you a little bit ago.
Oh, dope, man!
Yeah,
hell yeah!
I just slide right into it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Makes it more natural. That's cool. You came up a few weeks ago with Ramsey.
Came up with Ramsey and another comic named Jake Norwood.
Yeah, Jake's so funny.
Yeah, Jake's great, man. So is Ramsey.
Yeah,
hilarious too.
Yeah. I did an episode with Ramsey a little while back, and his microphone like malfunctioned, and I didn't.
Oh, did it?
I didn't realize it until after I like hit stop. So I spent like weeks like fixing the audio before I released it.
How'd it come out?
It's okay.
Oh, good.
I've like I said, I love podcasts, and I've listened to podcast with way shittier audio than that. You know, I'm just such an
about
it.
Of course,
But
I've listened to some rough ones as well.
Yeah. You kind of stick it out, you know. I mean, if it's interesting enough, and it was interesting.
That's great.
But was this? Was that your? I mean, have you been up to Fresno before? Or have you?
You know, I remember coming up here for like when I was younger for like punk shows.
Oh yeah,
like a random like punk bands playing up here.
Yeah.
Like buddies who knew other like young punks in the area.
There used to be some cool punk venues up here. There was. Well, it had a bunch of different names, but. When I was going to it, it was called Big Game. Okay. And it was in a real shitty part of downtown Fresno.
Yeah. As it should be.
Yeah. Exactly. It was everything you wanted out of a punk venue.
Yeah.
We played there a couple times, my band and I.
But you know what? It's like this area that I'm always kind of like, it's this area that you pass by on the 5 a lot so much, or like on the 99 when you're going somewhere else. And it's like this part of California that's like, kind of like a mystery to me, but almost like it's almost kind of romantic to me in that sense, because I look at it and I just think like I'm probably waxing poetic, but I think of like those like Grapes of Wrath or those John Steinbeck books about Central California, and like you just I kind of like, I don't know, man, I'm always one of those guys that anytime I look out into a town like on the way somewhere, those middle of the state, I always just think to myself, who lives here? I'm like, who lives here? I want to know who lives here. What do people do? And I was just like, every time we were talking about punk stuff, like every time I pass by a town, I go, man, is there a punk kid there, like listening to records or like, you know, like trying to put something together? Like where are the weirdo kids? Where are the record stores at? You know,
and you know what's funny is there doesn't really even matter the size of the town. There is at least one of those kids, you know.
Oh yeah, there's always one of those kids. And then thankfully, even if he doesn't have necessarily a record store, he has the internet.
Yeah, right.
So he's finding out who like hardcore and punk bands are.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's funny you say that. I mean, because I have a similar view in terms of like the romanticism. Like Fresno to me has this weird energy. This weird like immigrant energy where, you know, like the Central Valley in particular in Fresno, there are a lot of different. I mean, you know, there's a big Hispanic community. There's I'm Armenian. There's a big Armenian community. We have a fairly large like Hmong population. There's a lot of Filipinos. There's a lot of
Indian community too,
big
right?
Indian community, and there is sort of like a weird like energy that gets imparted into like the soil. You know, sometimes you can go to these like really old parts of Fresno, and sometimes if you just kind of like look up, you know, like you can kind of almost like put yourself in those shoes, like when you're not necessarily looking at like street level stuff, but if you're like looking up at the trees and the older buildings and stuff, you're like, oh, it's just kind of what they would have seen, you know, like you can almost put yourself in that and tap into like that old,
you know what it
feel.
Is? It's when you drive by or you're driving through some of these towns, it has that feel that literary style that a lot of like immigrant community or like other communities, foreign communities have, which is like magical realism.
Yeah.
It kind of just, it feels a little mysterious. It feels a little weirdly magical where you're just like, I don't know, there's something to these kind of places.
And you're not, and I don't think you're as, I don't think you're as off base as you think you are, and feeling that way, because there are some great writers from this area. Like there's a guy named William Soroyan,
I've heard
who's
of that
an
guy.
Armenian poet who's real famous. And there's another guy. He was a Hispanic guy. His last name was Soto, Gary Soto.
Oh no.
Wrote a lot of really great. He wrote a lot of really great fiction in how was it, like the 60s or 70s, about growing up and being Hispanic around here, you know. Like we used to read his books in elementary school.
Oh,
it was like
awesome.
required reading.
Yeah, it's so cool to like be here. Even like we went out to go have breakfast earlier today. It was like, yo, this is dope. I like to see where people hang out at.
Totally, absolutely. Just get a feel for the locales and stuff. That was we were Danny and I were doing that travel. We did that tour, and that was a lot of what I was looking for too. I was like, I don't know, like take me to the shittiest restaurant in town that's good, you know?
Where's a good dive bar?
Exactly.
Good dive bar. Is there a record store that like kids hang out at? Or I don't know, just like I love that stuff, man.
Absolutely. I like I do that. I think comic book shops are usually what I like to look. Well, you do the same thing.
Yeah. I'll look some up. Yeah, which is funny because this morning I asked you, do you know any good comic book shops?
Yeah, and there's I mean that stuff's around, and I mean that's better than, I don't know, going to Best Buy.
Yeah,
know,
of
like,
course.
you
Yeah,
know?
But you know what's so funny? It's like I heard this about like I heard this somebody say this about like punk labels. Mm-hmm. Like they used to talk about like you could wear an Epitaph T-shirt or an SST records or whatever punk record label puts out records that you like because it means something. But to wear like a Sony Records T-shirt or Epic Records or Columbia, it means nothing.
Yeah, literally,
it means nothing. But you understand that like these like maybe like a punk label, it speaks to you deeper than just it's a belief system or a lifestyle more so than it is like
absolutely.
Yeah.
What was the other? Tooth and Nail?
Tooth and Nail. You would see you could totally rock a Tooth and Nail T-shirt.
I mean, they always had that weird religious angle, but
that's right.
I was a big MXPX fan growing up. So
they did have that weird. You're right.
Yeah. That's well. And now, were you a musician? I mean, are you?
No, I was never a musician.
You're just a fan of the.
I was just always a fan of like music. I just I just always I got into like rock music pretty young, and a lot of when I was growing up in LA, it was like I'm first generation Mexican American, so it was like it wasn't there was this idea of like I grew up in South LA, and it's like it's Black and Latino community, so it's like the two musics you hear is your parents' music.
Right.
You'll hear like Mexican music or other forms of Latino music, and then you hear like kind of hip hop and what the Black community was listening to.
Yeah.
So you're kind of like sometimes you're like I don't want to be like my parents, or maybe that rebellious spirit, and then you're also like, well, I know that speaks maybe more culturally to like young Black kids, and then you're like, man, what am I looking for? And then you just hear some angry music, and you're like, this is what I'm fucking with. Like, this feels right.
Yeah.
And then I started listening to stuff like that. And I think, and I was always just a fan. I was always just a fan. I was always listening.
You're in that weird position as a first generation kid, where I mean, you're really the first one to like have to figure out, first member of your family to have to figure out your identity. Yeah, because your parents know who they are. Yeah, they know where they came from. Yeah, and you're stuck in this weird like in between. Yeah, like I mean, between the old culture and the new culture. And you're this weird bridge generation. You know,
that you're trying to make something out of what you're into. Like, and it's also weird because it kind of causes like this weird. It could cause an inferiority complex because I know you were talking about this earlier that you said when you heard System of a Down, it gave you some sense of like, oh man, it's cool to be Armenian. Yeah. Like I feel some sense of pride, or like, wow, these dudes are kind of like me. And I remember feeling the same way. Even like, I don't know, I remember just like, even with like Rage Against the Machine, Zach De La Rocha was a Mexican dude, or like at the drive-in. Yeah. Latino guys, or there was other kind of like other punk bands around that which I thought, okay, this stuff is for me, and I can interject my own culture into it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, and also too, I'd imagine that like, at least maybe on some level, you're thinking like, oh, if they could figure it out, I could figure it out.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, it took me a while to figure it out, but
and that's great. But I also think that's really like fertile grounds for creativity too. Yeah. I mean, maybe not so much when you're in the thick of it. Yeah. But it gives you a lot to chew on later on in life.
Yeah, man. It's so funny. That stuff, it's almost, once you're not like in it as much, you almost get this different appreciation for it. Yeah. And you contextualize it different. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's just not about like angry vocals, or you look at the era. Like, what made these kids feel like this at this time? What was the landscape? You know, what did they feel they were rebelling against, as silly as it may have been? Right. Or, like, it's really cool when you've gotten a little older and you like a few other different things. Yeah. you know?
Yeah.
And you can look at that stuff contextually.
Yeah. And almost in a more objective manner too, just because it's so much. The first time you're hearing it, and it's really connecting with you. It's very emotional.
Yeah.
You know, and so to kind of like take a step back from a piece of art that you were absolutely in love with and still like love, but also can kind of like pick apart, you know, like what was it about them? What was it about me? You know, like what was I going through when I listened to this?
I always think it's funny, like sometimes you'll watch like a music video on YouTube and there'll be like some kid who will comment, I can't believe this shit has only 10,000, like 50,000 views, and fucking Lady Gaga or Justin Bieber has 1 billion views. And then they're like kind of complaining about that. But what's so funny is, and I probably could have been that kid, but it's so funny because when I look at that, I go, yeah, shithead, that's what makes it so special to you.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this is the reason it only has 50,000 views. It means much more to you.
Right.
You know? Because this is a fucking community.
Definitely.
And not all communities are big, you know?
Give me 1 second. I want to check something.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
I'm going to pause the recording real quick. Let's see. Because I was thinking about it as you were talking. I want to make sure.
Great.
Okay, we're back. Sorry about that jump cut, folks. I was having a little PTSD after the Ramsey Badawi episode, and I was afraid that I hit the record button in the wrong order. Anyway, it was fine. We're back. Yeah. I didn't want to get an hour and a half into.
But check out Ramsey Badawi.
Yeah, Ramsey Badawi. Am I right?
Funny comic.
So I think we're recording it correctly.
Yeah.
We were recording it correctly then, and we're still recording it correctly now. So I just have. I'm just worried.
I get it, man. You
get frazzled sometimes.
Yeah, you were frazzled. You were frazzled. I had to hold you there for a minute.
We were talking. Oh, and it was actually a good segue. In your comedy, Chris, you talk a lot about growing up in. Now you grew up in L.A.
I grew up in L.A.
Was it like East L.A.?
No, it was like South Central and Inglewood.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, you were in the thick of it.
Yeah, I was in the thick of it.
Yeah, you got a lot of. You got a lot of great jokes about getting chased by dogs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was half of my youth was spent being chased by pitbulls. Yeah, loose pitbulls. Yeah, dude.
So funny.
Yeah, that was half of my youth.
And what for you was like? I mean, like you're growing up, and you know, your first generation. You're really into music. Like, where does like comedy come along for you and all of that?
Well, you know what? Comedy kind of came along like, man, well, you know, like a lot of punks are goofballs.
Yeah.
They like comedy. Or even like listening to like even certain bands like the Ramones. You're like, these guys are being ridiculous. Like, it's almost funny.
You're right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're goofballs.
And I mean, I don't know.
Like dangerous goofballs.
Yeah. Well, I remember, you know, I was really into. I remember buying a Blink 182 VHS. It was sort of like their tour video, and just thinking that was like the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Shit.
You know, when I was a kid. So
I think a lot of that, and then I remember kind of just like getting like really liking comedy, but having no thought that I could do that. Like just being like, damn, this is so cool, man. Like liking comedy, watching like, you know, stuff like Tough Crowd with Colin Quinn, or even like Arrested Development, like sitcoms and sketch like SNL and stuff like that, and like stand up. I mean, I remember listening to like, but I liking all types of stuff. Like I remember like liking stuff like Patton Oswalt, but at the same time like liking George Lopez, and then at the same time watching like Comic View on BET, and seeing people like Earthquake. I was just kind of like, yo, this is so dope. And it's like just kind of watching all those and like feeling just as like influenced by all of them, you know, like even back then, like it's so funny because it was one of those things where because of where I grew up and my taste, because of my taste, like of music and books and shit like that, I could appreciate a Patton Oswalt. Yeah. And because of my background, I could appreciate George Lopez, and because of living in South LA and growing up with like African Americans, I can appreciate Earthquake. Like, so it was all that kind of stuff. Like it was just a real melting pot. Like at least personally for me, you know, and just like liking all that kind of stuff. And finding it as each is valid in their own way. You know, not one being more necessarily important than the other.
Oh, that's great, man. Yeah, that's a great outlook on it. And so you're growing up and kind of recapping all of that, what we just talked about. I mean, what was high school like for you?
High school was pretty crazy, man. I went to Inglewood High School, and I went in high school at the tail end of the 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah, right.
So in LA, it was a lot of gangbanging was going on.
Yeah.
A lot of gangbang. And I mean, I went to a high school where you had to go through like metal detectors, and they had or they would have random gun searches during the period. They'd come in and go, we're checking for weapons.
Yeah.
There was and also I went to a school that was, maybe 2,000 students or 2,500, and then half split down the middle was half of it is African Americans and black kids, and then the other half is like Latino kids, and there was a lot of gangs in the neighborhood. Wow. So then what ended up happening was we would have race riots twice a year. So twice a year would be like black
race riots, everybody.
Yeah, so there would be the biannual. Yeah, it was so funny. There would be one on Cinco de Mayo and one on like around Black History Month.
What?
And it would literally be like black and Latino kids just going at it hard. I mean, a lot of it was the gang members because that's what it was rooted in. Sure. There was a bunch of kids who didn't participate in it who were just like, this is fucking dumb. I don't want to do this, But there's a lot of people who weren't gang members also participated in it, and probably out of necessity. Sure. You know what I mean? It was so and then also aside from that kind of stuff, I think I was like this punk rock kid. I mean, I don't know that I was necessarily dressing like a punk. I wasn't. I think I kind of dressed like all the kids in my neighborhood, but I liked punk rock music, But I was also into hip hop, or I was just into stuff that was a little more alternative or artier or whatever. But yeah, I was into that kind of stuff. So me and my friends, it's so funny because I always think about it like this: you had to learn. You couldn't be too precious about liking your stuff. Like you couldn't have that attitude where you thought somebody else was dumb because they didn't like the kind of music you like, because then you wouldn't have any fucking friends.
Sure.
Right. So it's like, and then also you couldn't. It was one of those things where I think what helped too was like liking that stuff, but also knowing how to talk to like gang members, knowing how to talk to like people. Yeah. So you just go, oh, this is the thing I like. It doesn't need to reflect in every aspect of my life. Like I don't need to judge people who don't like this stuff. I don't need to be a snob about it. Right. So when you're not a snob about it, because you couldn't be, you'd probably be picked on if you were. So you learn how to talk to people. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? So
yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I see that. I learned that lesson very differently. I learned it through, a little through my upbringing, but I learned a lot of that in that mentality in sales, Yeah. Because you had to learn how, like, I worked at CarMax for many years. Yeah. And you had to sell cars to everybody, white, black, Hispanic, whatever. You got to be able to like connect with anybody.
Yeah, you have to connect with people. Yeah.
I mean, mine was to make money. Yours was to survive.
Yeah.
Mine might be a little different, but same kind of situation.
Yeah, so it was that situation where you're just like, it's just like, oh yeah, I don't. You just need to learn how to talk to people, because you don't want to be a punk and you don't want to be like picked on or whatever. Right. It was that like idea of like, man, I need to be just a cool motherfucker, so people can accept what I'm into, but I know how to talk to everyone.
Yeah, and that's such an invaluable skill when you're a comedian, is just being able to talk to I think everybody.
It helped. It felt like it kind of helped me a little bit. It helped me in terms of comedy, because I remember when I first started, I would go to like Black and Latino rooms in LA, just because they were kind of like not too far from me and from where I lived. So I would go to those, and I didn't feel like a sense of intimidation, because I was like, oh, well, these are, one, I'm Latino, and one, these are the people I grew up with. Yeah. So even if they're not literally my friends, we have a shared experience. I can be even colloquial and talk about some shit like the street we're on, and so. But then also, I think what helped too was like then when I started going to like more kind of mainstream or alternative rooms, if sometimes some of that comedy can be a little referential. Sure. But I knew what they were talking about. Right. You know what I mean? Right. Like if they did a music or a film reference or like, it wasn't lost on me.
Sure.
Yeah, I like maybe it didn't appear to them, but I like just as much as some of the stuff they liked.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah,
I was able to speak that language as well. You know?
That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, definitely. And it sounds like you were able to take a lot of these different influences and experiences and kind of cobble them together into something
I try.
really meaningful.
I feel like I keep trying too. Like, you know what I mean? Because it's like one of those things where you want to be unique, but you still want to make people not like you laugh, you know? So it's like one of those weird things where it's like, how do I try to be a unique comic, you know, not be so pedestrian, but make people who are maybe more pedestrian laugh at this shit.
Yeah, you know? I mean, there's definitely, you have to have a little bit that's down the middle, you know? You got to get everybody on your side, because I find that, you know, if you can just be right down the middle and get them on your side, then you can say whatever the fuck you want.
Win them over.
Yeah, exactly.
Win them over.
Yeah, get them on your team, and then let's go someplace, you know?
Yeah, I always think it's like, be down the middle with stuff you're comfortable being down the middle. Not anything that you feel you're sacrificing your voice.
That's a great point, too.
Be down the middle on stuff that you're like, you know what, I feel comfortable being a centrist when it comes to this thing.
Yeah.
Or, you know, and then that way you don't feel like
you're not being a hack.
You're not being a hack, and you're not pandering.
Right.
But it's like, yo, this down the middle part of me right now, this is really who I am. Let me give you this before I hit you with that weird or more like esoteric type shit, you know?
And can I ask you, it's different in Fresno because we have basically one scene. You know, which is everybody just coming out and doing comedy. But in LA, obviously you have different scenes. You have like an alt scene and then like the Latin comedy scene. You know, what's I'm always really interested in that because I was working with a couple of Indian comics the last couple of weeks, and they were talking about the Indian comedy scene and like and how they view other Indian comics and what they like and what they don't like, and I mean there's a whole almost like subculture to it. And that's something that I'm totally oblivious to. I mean, are you like real cognizant of like things happening within that community specifically, or you know?
Not really. I mean, like when I started, I would go to those rooms, but you know what's so funny? I only had enough confidence to do my stuff. I didn't have enough confidence to go up and introduce myself to other people and act like we're peers.
Oh, interesting.
You know?
Yeah.
It was just one of those things where I just thought it was silly to be like, go up to someone and feel entitled to a friendship.
Sure.
Because I was just kind of like, well, I'm new to this. I want to get good. Why should you be my friend? Like, you know, you probably don't want to be my friend. I'm good. So I kind of kept to myself. And then when I started going to those more like mainstream or out rooms, I had the same mentality. But then I ended up kind of being in those rooms a little longer. But I also try to navigate a lot in LA. Like, I know some of those, like some of the guys in the scene that's a little more purely Latino scene. I know some of them, and sometimes they'll invite me on their shows, and I like doing it because I feel like I don't have a problem talking to people. You know, like I know how to talk to my own people, you know, or whatever. But I don't know that I'm invested in that scene. But I have respect for it. I'll go if I would love to do whenever they invite me to do a show. Yeah, man, let's do it. You know. But it's weird too because I also come from like a diverse group of friends, like, and we're all just comics. Like, I mean, one of my closest friends is Ramzi Badawi, Palestinian dude, Middle Eastern, you know, and another one's like this comic named Opie, like who goes by his real name's Opie Yemi Olabaju, but like, you know, just like Nigerian dude, like, you know, and then there's like Paige Weldon and Finn Straley, like, and then Katie French, and we're all just kind of like, it just feels like we all come from these different backgrounds, but we're all just striving to be as funny as we can be.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny, maybe a little smart, but not too smart. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, just surrounding yourself with the right people. And I had, because you know, every scene has its drama, and I've just found myself on some Facebook like Latin comedy Facebook page. Like I was like, oh, there's drama.
Oh,
Literally in every.
You know what's so funny? We probably saw the same drama.
Probably.
It was about some good dude getting punched.
It was it was somebody. I think what it was somebody talking about how sometimes Latin comics are better at tearing each other down rather than.
Oh, I've seen that. Yeah,
and like just me as an outsider, I was like, oh man, I didn't think about that as its own scene. Just because I'm
you're right.
I'm in this weird place where I think all comedy is all the same scene, but that's just my point of reference being from a small town.
But also that's kind of my point of reference too, just from like starting where I started. Like when I started in LA, there was a bunch of comics from all kind of different backgrounds hanging out with each other, doing a traditional kind of more American style stand-up that didn't always necessarily focus on identifying with your culture. You know what I mean?
Right. That wasn't necessarily what it was about.
Yeah, it wasn't it wasn't the crust of it, which is fine. For that stuff that is, But all scenes have their drama. It's funny, but I get it. I mean, but it's so weird. I get what they mean. I'm sure there is like Latino comics that pull each other down. I always get excited anytime if I see a Latino comic in the room that I don't know or is new. My thought is I hope they're funny.
Yeah.
Like I don't feel intimidated. I go, man, I hope they're funny.
Yeah.
I hope they're funny and I hope they like it. And if they ever wanted to talk to me and ask me, hey, what's a good place to go to? I'm by no means an authority, but in LA, but I've gone to enough mics that I know, hey man, go to this one. It's worth it. Don't go to that. It's not worth, so.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Always open to it. And how old were you when you started going to those rooms?
Man, 28.
28? Okay. Yeah.
So, I started comedy at 28.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
28 going on to 29.
And like, was it, what was the genesis of making that decision? Was there...
You know what? I was so like... I think for a long time I so like meandered in life, dude. I was such a fucking... I feel so like... I was such a loser, man. I was so afraid of doing things.
Yeah.
I was just like... It's funny, I was this guy that would listen to all this cool stuff and be excited that people are doing things, but I wasn't doing shit. I was just being scared or being in shitty relationships, or I don't know what it was. And then what I really wanted to do before stand-up was I wanted to write TV. Like I wanted to write on sitcoms.
Yeah.
And I worked for a writer, but I was just working for him, hoping that because I work for him, somehow that's going to make me something one day. But it doesn't. It only makes you something. People are only going to help someone who's helping themselves out, Yeah. And man, I remember I taught myself how to write a few TV scripts. Like I wrote scripts for like existing shows.
Oh, sure. You did like spec script.
I wrote a few specs. Like I spec like New Girl and Parks and Recs and Archer. And like I applied to a few things. I got a meeting here too. But nothing was really kind of happening. And then I always wanted to try stand up. And you know what's so funny? Foolishly, I was in a real bad relationship years before. And I was like, I remember mentioning like, I really want to start stand up. And she was like, oh, that's lame. And I was like, yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah.
And I didn't.
It's the worst.
Didn't do it. And it's so funny because it's like years later, you get perspective. I'm like, oh, I'm not even mad at her. I'm mad at myself for letting me be influenced that way,
Yeah, absolutely.
And then finally I did start stand up, and it's kind of funny. It's like, in a way, I left like a job. Like I used to have a pretty, like not a dream job, but just a job that paid well, that if I wanted to, I could have stayed there for the rest of my life and been fine.
Yeah.
But I always think I just started stand up, and then like a year and a half into stand up, I quit that job, and then I was like, man, it's one of those things where it's like funny because I'm like, in a way, it's like it's the most I've struggled kind of financially.
Yeah. But
the most exciting and kind of happiest I've been,
because it feels good to feel something.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like when you're in these soul sucking jobs and you're just numb.
Yeah,
and you just want to fucking feel something. Like, and even if it's fear.
Yeah, I know.
It's just good to be scared. Like
because I remember my plan was, even when I was like, well, maybe this is gonna be my life, which is fine. Man, I have nothing but respect for people who work hard and do a job for 20
Sure.
25 years. Like the amount of bravery that takes,
Dude, there is definitely like
and commitment.
I call it like blue collar courageous. Like
I love it, man.
Where you're just getting up and you're doing this thing for your family.
Yeah, that's what I come
love
from.
Them that much.
Yeah. That's my mom. Like that's my family's blue collar. So like you respect it so much.
Yeah.
But I remember just thinking like, I feel like I could do something else.
Yeah.
And then, but it was funny because I remember I thought to myself, even before I started stand up and right before I started like teaching myself how to write like scripts or whatever, I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll find a job, and the way I'll make my life meaningful is I'll save up money, and when I'll take a vacation, I'll go somewhere and travel.
Okay.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
just
right.
to like have those experiences. Like I'll go to like somewhere in Europe or somewhere in Africa or somewhere in Asia or somewhere. And I did. I remember I went to like Cambodia and Thailand.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, because I just thought like I think this might be it. This might be my life.
Sure.
Which is fine, but then let me make sure I get these moments to travel and make life a little more exciting than, or at least even like get to know California a little bit, like leave for a weekend,
right.
Go somewhere in California that
there's a lot of experiences to be had just here.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. So this is a podcast where we talk about our dads.
Let's do it.
And you have a dad.
I have a dad.
And he now, so he immigrated to America.
He's Mexican. He immigrated. He was from Jalisco, in central Mexico, and he immigrated here. I want to say when he was maybe like 19, 20 or something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And 19, now did he meet your mom here in the United States?
Yeah, they met in Los Angeles.
I got you.
Yeah, they met in LA.
And so what? Where did he? So he got here when he was 19, but I like to start way at the beginning.
Yeah.
Let's go back even further. So like, what part of Mexico did he grow up in?
Jalisco. It's in Central California, and it's this small town. I mean, really in the valleys of the mountain. It's called. It's an old. The name of the town is Nahuatl. It's not. That's the name of the language. It's called Atotonilco.
Okay.
It's not even Spanish based.
Yeah. I've heard that there are some languages like that spoken.
Yeah. So it's not Spanish. The name of the town it's a native name.
Okay.
Yeah. So he came from there, and
this you said, and that's Central Mexico.
Yeah, Central Mexico.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, on off of the coast.
Gotcha.
Pacific coast, yeah.
And I mean, so have you ever been there?
I went. You know what's so crazy? My dad's kind of a mystery to me. We don't have like a great relationship, but he's kind of someone that I've learned information about him from other people.
Oh, interesting.
So I mean, and my parents were divorced too, so he was kind of in and out of my life. Kind of a bad relationship for a long time, and then a relationship that's just kind of like, oh, he is who he is, and that's cool. It's like you come to terms with who people are or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, he came from this town, and I remember when I was a kid, some lady told me who knew him was like, oh, your dad was like kind of almost lived an orphan life. He would hop trains all over the country and go find work as like almost like a peasant kid.
Yeah.
Like he was almost like a hobo kid. Would kind of like go find work in a town, go work in a field, and pick in field or maybe shine shoes and stuff like that.
Was he doing that in lieu of going to school? Like, did he get any kind of a...
Yeah, he didn't go to school.
No?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, too, like, my dad's illiterate.
Oh,
so
really?
It's so funny. It's shaped the way we kind of even communicate. So it's so even though, like, now our relationship is fine, it's better, but we're not super close. But he's diabetic, or he'll take medication. So I'll instruct him on how to take his medication. Wow. So it's really interesting. So it teaches you how to deal with people who are illiterate. Like, so for example, if he needs to take it twice a day, I'll write. I'll put 2 sticks on the label. I'll draw 2 sticks. Or if it's morning or night, if it's morning, I'll draw a sun.
Wow.
And if it's night, I draw a crescent moon.
Wow.
Because then he gets it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow,
I mean,
what a man. That's got to be a real challenge.
yeah, it's a real challenge, and it's so funny. When I was growing up, I remember he was he was an ill-tempered dude for the time that he was around.
Sure.
And then, but I realize now, and kind of like sometimes when I talk to him, I think it's a frustration.
I was thinking that. I mean, that's got to be
illiteracy. You know what I mean?
Especially when he sees his son, reading it. 5 and 6 years old, you're probably sitting there reading books. And,
yeah.
And I mean, if anything, it make you feel inadequate. It's not being able to do the thing a child can do.
Yeah. So I think that was it. So it was really crazy in that sense, like showing him how to read that. But all the stuff that information I ever got about my old man was secondhand information.
Interesting.
Yeah, he was kind of like didn't really talk too much.
Now, and you said you went down to Jalisco?
Yeah. I went down there when I was. I remember. I think the first time I went down there when I was five or six, and it was my parents were still together at the time. We went down there, and it's in the valley of these mountains, and it's just kind of a real green place. I just remember I just remember seeing his mom, my grandmother, and I just remember being like kind of running through sugarcane fields.
Cool.
Yeah, just remember
sounds like
that.
a rad memory as a kid.
Yeah, just remember sugarcane fields, or like local stands sell you bags of sugarcane as candy for you to chew on.
Wow. Yeah, right.
Yeah. And then that's what I remember. I don't have too many memories, but yeah.
And so now when you went down there, I mean, was it like a lot of people? I mean, did he have a lot of family and
yeah,
he
he had other sisters there. A lot of my aunts and uncles are out here in the States, but then he still had like brothers and sisters out there. His grandma, his mom.
And are these the people you're hearing the stories from?
Yeah, a little bit. Some of them, and then also just what's so funny is he. I don't think my dad's not close to family. He's closer to his friends and strangers.
Oh, interesting.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's one of those. We always laugh. He's one of those guys that'll ditch you to go hang out with a group of friends.
Oh.
You know?
That's rough.
Yeah, which is
for you as a kid.
Yeah, as a kid, you're kind of like, it is what it is, and then you're just kind of like, it's fine. You don't really care. But he's just one of those dudes that would like. But it also, I think he grew up fatherless. He grew up in a kind of fucked up family dynamic.
Sure.
So, now at that age, I'm just like, oh, that's what it is. And, okay, cool, you can't teach an old dog. Certain dogs aren't going to learn new tricks. Some maybe, but,
sure.
It's all right,
And when he came over when he was 19?
19, 20, I think so, about that age.
Where did he, when he showed up, what part of the United States did he show up?
LA.
It was LA.
Yeah, showed up to Los Angeles.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
and was just what kind of work was he doing?
Oh, dude, like busboy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, literally got was able to get busboy work, and then became a career bartender.
Really?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
So he became a career bartender.
Yeah,
also drank like a fish.
Sure.
So yeah, after working in the restaurant business for a long time, he's a career bartender.
Wow.
For like El Chorito.
Wow, and he was I mean, that's it's definitely like a different I think kind of the stereotypical immigrant. Everybody thinks migrant workers.
Yeah.
So he went almost an unconventional route, but. At the same time, too, that's a good way to go, man.
It's not bad.
What he did.
He went to the city. He busted his ass in the service industry.
Yeah,
and then became a career bartender.
Yeah, because migrant work is so hard. Oh God, there's there's no sick days.
It's hard work, man. Migrant work.
If you're not feeling well, you can't take a half day.
There's no union.
Yeah, right.
It's kind of depending. It can be exploitive work.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's hard work.
I've heard stories from people, firsthand accounts of being like working out there in the fields and then getting crop dusted by a plane, and like everybody just like hunkers down and like covers their faces.
I know.
Unbelievable.
Man, it's some real fucked up shit. Some real John Steinbeck, worse than Grapes of Wrath type shit.
Right.
Yeah.
So he was able to kind of circumvent that route.
Yeah, he circumvented that route. Yeah, he was kind of like, he's a city slicker.
Interesting.
Yeah, always kind of a city slicker. Like, it's so funny. I mean, we're out here in Central California, so he's not your typical like Mexican dude in that he wore a cowboy hat and cowboy boots, had that like kind of like paisa tejano style. That wasn't him. He was kind of a dude who came with like dress shoes, slacks, like a Razor Ramon type dude with like his shirt open and a gold chain and a toothpick in his mouth.
Oh, how funny.
He was a city slicker.
Yeah.
Like, he just came out here and he was like, he wasn't trying to, like, I'm not wearing cowboy. Hey, I have some dress shoes, I have slacks. I'm going to wear a button up, but I'm not going to button it all the way up. I'm going to have a gold chain.
I mean, he just sounds like a dude that was, I mean, it's honestly, it almost sounds like he was ready. He was ready for I mean, just to change,
Yeah, probably. I think
like a first start, and he like really leaned into that first start.
Yeah, I think so.
Which is admirable, it's got to be the scariest thing in the whole wide world to move to another country.
Yeah, it has to be fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine doing it.
Yeah.
I like it here.
Right.
Yeah.
With a different place, a different language.
Yeah.
And so he starts tending bar. Is that where he meets your mom, or
no? I think they. There's different stories that I heard that they met at a restaurant, but then she recently told me, no, we met on the bus in LA. So I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. I thought it was the other one, but,
And so your dad I mean, is it fair to say he was a bit of a party animal?
Oh, yeah, man. He was a party animal.
And was your mom kind of like the yin to his yang? Or was
my mom is not a party animal.
Okay.
My mom was like, my mom's idea was, I'm going to come to America. I'm going to have 3 kids. I'm going to buy a home. I want to buy them homes. Like, she had that whole mentality.
I mean, the American dream.
Yeah. And his mentality, I don't know what I think he wanted success. He just didn't know how to attain that.
Yeah.
Kind of an immature dude, a little bit of a party animal, would drink a lot. So, right. I think he just didn't. He coasted. He was able to live certain things out because he was with my mom to a point, and then just kind of kept going. Like, after they divorced, he just kind of existed.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he was definitely the kind of like more party irresponsible guy to her, like very like I have a dream. This is my goal. Shit like that.
Were they able to? I mean, was your mom able to like get some of that dream though? I mean,
it's 3 of us. She's a homeowner. And she bought rental property when she was years ago.
Fucking brilliant.
And then,
in LA.
And she bought like a 3-unit property, and she was like, there's 3 units. I have 3 kids. This is there, and and then she was able to do more. She was able to buy more. But that was her mentality.
That's
like, she did it.
Dude.
I mean, she kind of, and it's funny too because she has like she can read and write, but she has like an elementary school education.
True.
That's it.
But she's doing it.
She's
great.
doing it. Yeah.
And so was the situation? And we don't have to get into this if you don't want.
But, no, I don't mind.
They divorced. Was it sort of like, was it a situation where your mom was just kind of like fed up with your dad?
Oh, yeah. Fucking did not want to deal with his bullshit. She was like, this motherfucker is going to bankrupt me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like, this motherfucker had, like, it was so funny. She, like, I always joke that I think that in her reason for divorce was his low credit score. Like, I mean, that was probably her thought was this motherfucker is gonna bankrupt me.
Yeah,
because I mean he just he was kind of a party animal. Didn't really know how, wanted to be successful. Didn't really know how.
Yeah,
was slightly arrogant about it at times. I think a lot of it might have to do with being illiterate.
It's I mean, it seems
I can't even imagine
me.
what that shit is like.
Yeah, I mean, so, I can't imagine how badly that would hold you back. Like, it was hamstrung from so many things.
Yeah, and then I mean, that's what broke them. That's why they divorced. I mean, he was kind of a fuck up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And so after the divorce, he just keeps on with the bartending and
keeps on with the bartending. Owns a bar. Opened his own bar. Yeah, wow. Yeah. Opened. Right before they got divorced, he opened his own bar.
Okay.
Yeah, and then he had a bar. It failed eventually. You know what I mean? And just he just it's one of those things. It's like what is Biggie saying? 10 crack commandments. Like, you can't get high off of your own supply.
Yep, that's it.
Getting high off of his own supply.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's still impressive, though. I mean, to start a business while...
Well, it's impressive, but I will say this. It was kind of like my mom buying into his salesmanship, his hope, It was her kind of like being... She was just like, well, he kind of sold me on it, and, she made it possible.
Sure.
Yeah.
Is he, I mean, is he bilingual? I mean, does he...
No. He speaks probably enough English to get by at work.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
Like, and my mom's the same way. She probably, maybe 25%.
Yeah, well, there you go. And so what's he doing now? Is he still bartending?
No, now he's still bartending, works at a restaurant, does bartending work, picks up a few busboy schedules, Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get into the real meaty stuff. What was your relationship like with him growing up? I mean, I know you said it was
not a real good one. I was, what's so funny is like kind of wasn't around and was kind of like, at times like I feel bad, but it was like I almost thought like he was kind of pathetic, And it was so funny. I was recently telling someone else on another podcast that I felt like I was looking for like fucking like role model, like male role models and other things.
Yeah.
Like, I just remember, I'm like, man, I would admire other, even fictional dudes. Like, I joked around. I was like, at one point I wanted Wolverine to be my dad. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Like, it's so funny. I would gravitate towards things where it was like, whether it was movies or books about other dudes.
Yeah.
Who had some sense of ethics or like or dependability, or you know what I mean,
right.
Like those kind of stuff. So
because you're trying to define masculinity.
Yeah,
and that's a tough struggle without a good male role model. Is like, who do you're looking at X-Men.
Yeah, you're looking at shit like that. You're looking at movies. You're looking at books. Like,
and that's
you're trying to find that shit. So we had like this real handshake relationship. Like, it's so funny. I remember like right before they broke up, like they divorced or whatever. It was so funny. It always makes me laugh because I remember he was like standing outside. It was drunk. He was smoking a cigarette, and I went outside and we just started talking. And then I was just like, man, like, I don't know what happened. I don't know why I don't know what I asked him specifically to him give me this answer, but I must have asked him, like, why are you the way you are? Like, kind of like, he was a difficult dude, didn't give, you know what I mean? Right. Just felt like he loved no one.
Yeah.
His friends were at the bar, on the street, other women, shit like that, right?
Yeah.
I remember he told me this thing, and he said, when you're a dog and you live on the streets and you're a street dog, all you know is to be on the street. That's why when somebody rescues a street dog, he'll turn his back on that home. Like that dog home and those treats and that food every day, because all he knows is how to be a street dog.
Yeah.
And then I remember thinking like, wow, what a fucking poetic summation of who he is or whatever. And then I remember years later, asking, hey, you remember when you told me that shit? Because it felt like it did not fucking remember it. Was like, it was so fucking funny.
Roman stepped all over that sentimental moment.
Yeah. And then I'm just like, oh yeah, that shit that I've been holding in my fucking head the whole fucking time. Yeah, of course you don't fucking remember. That's hilarious.
Oh man, it's funny.
Yeah. So I was just for years holding on to that shit. We're saying like, well, you know what? I may not know him, but one time he revealed himself to me in that funny way. And I remember asking him, hey, you remember that time you told me that? And then him looking at me like a little baffled, like, nah, I don't. And then I was just like, yeah, you were drunk. You were fucking drunk.
Mentioned, so you have siblings.
Yeah.
Are they any closer with your dad or?
Yeah, me and my younger sister aren't, but it isn't like it's not like this resentment filled not being close. It's just we kind of just like, well, that's who he is, and it's kind of natural not to talk for weeks on end.
Sure.
Or you'll check in every now and then.
Right.
And then but him and my older sister have a strong relationship. That's his firstborn. I don't know that they necessarily have a strong relationship, but they have a relationship where she's constantly fucking pestering us to be closer to him, and us being like annoyed by him, being like, look, the way he is with you isn't necessarily the way he is with us.
Right.
Or the way you feel isn't necessarily the way we feel.
Do you feel like, I don't know, I mean, do you think it's because she's the oldest he's closest with her, or I mean,
probably. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, without talking shit, I think she probably has a codependent relationship with him.
Oh, sure.
I don't think it's the healthiest one.
Sure.
I don't think it. While I think mine is more disconnected, I think it's a lot healthier. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
But I think they have a codependent relationship with each other.
Sure.
He seeks her for help. She seeks him for kind of like validation and let's be close.
Yeah.
And that's their dynamic. So yeah, right. I don't. Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I mean, do you have any like? I always like to add. I mean, do you have any like really fun like anecdotes about your dad like growing up? I mean, is there ever time you guys took a vacation or I don't know. I mean, I was trying not to. I don't know. I mean, I try to find the happy moments too.
Yeah. I mean, it's so funny because I'm just like, I'm trying to think of that shit. I mean, we had stuff. You know what it is? We weren't super fucking close. I mean, shit that makes me laugh is me thinking we had a profound moment and him not remembering. That to me kind of means the world to me. That is just, I'm just like, oh, okay, that's fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
Like, I have enough sense of humor that I'm just like, I'm a fucking ass for thinking that's like, there's there's certain stuff, sometimes like, what it is? Sometimes I think he's this guy who refuses to accept that he's growing old.
Huh.
Yeah, he's growing old, and then he'll be like, sometimes he'll like, maybe I'll go visit him, and he's wearing like fucking tennis shoes and jeans. I'm like, what are you doing, dude? Fucking dress your age, you dork. Like it's that kind of stuff, where I'm just like,
that's funny.
Yeah, but it's so funny. It's just, like having a handshake is enough. Us like kind of like sometimes hearing him complain about someone, I'm just like, we don't have, you know what it is with, it's not necessarily that we have a single experience or a few amount of like memorable experience. It's moments.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what you have when you're, because the experiences we do have are kind of bad. Sure. You know what I mean? Like they're kind of bad. But then there's like moments where you're just like, I think when we were kids, I used to remember him watching like old Mexican movies. And me finding out about this like actor named Cantinflas, who was an old comedic actor who like Charlie Chaplin said, oh, he's the funniest man in the world.
Oh, wow.
Like, so like I remember I always remember him laughing at those movies, like just cracking up at those fucking movies. And then me laughing as well. Like I remember that's a thing that sometimes when I see him, we'll talk about these. I'll be like, hey, did you see that Cantinflas movies that was on TV the other day? Or that's kind of the thing we have is that it's so funny. It's
ironic that it's comedy related.
Yeah, and it's ironic because I don't think he knows what I do. He doesn't. He has an idea of what it is, but he doesn't really ask me questions. He just goes, he seems busy. Like, that's good.
Like in reference to you?
Yeah.
You seem busy.
Yeah. But he'll be like, oh, he's going somewhere to do his stuff. Okay, I guess it's working out.
Yeah.
You know? But so now I think it's just those moments. It's like we don't necessarily have these amazing fun moments. We do have those moments where I'll be like, man, you watched that Cantinflas movie the other day?
Yeah.
And he'll go, yeah. Or like, man, that was really funny. Or he'll mention, or if I stop, maybe one's on TV because they replay those movies so much. And I just see him get to crack up a little bit. You're just like, oh, good.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, behind the solemn dude is this fucking the sense of humor.
There's something in there.
Yeah, there's something in there.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Man.
Yeah.
Chris, you've been an awesome guest, man.
Oh, man, thanks for having me, man.
Can you tell people where to find you on like social media?
Oh, yeah, on social media, on Twitter, I'm at Chris Estrada 85, and then on Instagram, on Chris Estrada Comic, at Chris Estrada Comic, and then Facebook, just Chris Estrada. If you follow Dave, you'll see that we're mutual friends.
Yeah, I'll tag you in all this stuff.
Yeah, you got it.
That's great, man. Thanks so much. You were a fucking fantastic guest.
You got it.
All right, and we're back. That was Chris Estrada. He's great, right? I love him. Follow him on social media. He came up and headlined our rooms last week and just burned the place down. Him and Katie French came through and just threw 3 amazing shows for us. And actually, next week I'll have an episode I did with Katie French for you. Katie she's so funny. She's so interesting. And she tells this story at the end of next week's episode that is probably one of the best stories I've ever had told on the show. So I'm really, really excited to release that episode for you. So guys, thank you so much. If you want to support Sad Dad, there is I have a Patreon. I'll link that in the show notes here. And if you have any questions for me, if you vehemently disagree with that rant that I gave at the top of the show, feel free to email me at saddadpodcast@gmail.com. May or may not respond, but at least you got a place to send your hate mail. I like if you want to send me nice things too, you can send me those. I actually really prefer the nice stuff. I mean, if you're really upset at what I said, email me if you want. I guess it's just part of the job. But send me nice things too. Tell me you like my hair. Tell me I'm having a good hair day. You can't see it, but just trust me. It's a good sounding hair day. All right, you guys, you've been a ton of fun. Thanks so much for sticking it out, and thanks, a big thank you to Chris for being so open and sharing that story at a time we really need to hear stories like his. So, guys, I'll catch you next week. Thanks.